Happy Devil's Wednesday. This is the State of the Fan Address, episode 244, titled Devils in 2024. Streaming live on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, X Live, Twitter Live, and Twitch on the Let's Go Devils Network. I'm your host, Sam Wu, here with PucksandPitchforks.com Editor-in-Chief, Nick Villano. Yeah, baby. Yeah. Lots to talk about. Some injuries, some new goaltending, the new year. Nick, why don't you kick it off?
Yeah. Hey, listen, great new year. It was really, it was good to come into the new year with a nice win. No, I'm sorry, we lost, right? We lost was the Boston last game before the new year?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So they had a couple of nice wins, and they lost that Boston game, and everybody kind of melted down a little bit. But it's kind of funny how things are going this year with the Devils. It's either this elation, right? We're back in it and this is actually like what life is like on the playoff bubble, right? Every win is elation because you're back in a playoff spot. You're like, all right, we got that second wild card. We could beat the Rangers. We could beat, we've shown we could beat Boston before, and then you lose and you fall out of that playoff spot. It's like, you need to trade for a goalie now. You need to trade for a defenseman now. VTech needs to go to the AHL, and all these hot takes, these wild takes, these overarching takes. And, it's hard to be a Devils fan this year, right? I'm not trying to be like that guy, like, woe was me. But when you perform as well as the Devils did last year, and then you come into this season with all the expectations, and you kind of had to expect a little bit of adversity just because there was very little last year, right? Your big injuries last year was a short term. I think it was like 4 games of Jack Hughes, which, and then it took him another 10 games to kind of get back to normal. But then you had, you missed Nico Hischier for the first game. He played, I think, the next day he won. Dawson Mercer never missed a game, and he's avoided that sophomore slump. But then this year you have, Jack Hughes missed a good portion of time. Nico Hischier missed a good portion of time. Timo Meier's out again with what they're calling a what was it? A middle body injury. Don't know what that is. I mean, it's medium body. That's what they call it. They call it medium body, right?
Medium
Sam?
body, yes. Medium body.
I was trying to figure.
I was trying to figure out which mid part, synonym that they use.
Medium body is going to be the new dad bod. That's my goal for 2024 is to get that to catch on. It's like I'm medium body. I'm not hot. I'm not obese, but I'm medium bodied, right? Girls like medium bodies. Anyway, Timo Meier's out for the second time this year, right after he finally looks like himself for about 2 weeks. And, of course, you got Dougie Hamilton, who's out for the season. And the one we don't talk about a lot is that Nolan Foote hasn't stepped on the ice this season. And Nolan Foote, if y'all remember, we had him in the lineup from day one and playing a decent role next to McLeod and Bastian. And Bastian is just, and you see it tonight, against the Capitals. He's just not having a good night. Took a bad penalty, turned into a bad goal. The only goal of the night so far for the Capitals. And Bastian looks like a different guy when he's got McLeod on his wing, and that's because there's other good players that usually play with him, whether it's Halla, whether it's Holtz. The triumvirate on that fourth line just isn't what it is when it's Bastian, Tierney, and Lazar. So you expected Nolan Foote to be that third guy on that fourth line, and that would be a really skilled line that could do a lot. But Foote hasn't stepped onto the ice, and I don't know where he is. I don't know what injury he has. I don't know if he's out for the season. I don't know what the situation is. But it's a microcosm of everything else that's going on with the season. The defense has been bad. The goaltending has been worse than the league. I say what you want about the Toronto Maple Leafs. They at least had Joseph Wall for a couple of weeks, who played very well, and they had the best Martin Jones has played in a while. So whatever. Samsonov is probably as bad as Vanacek, and then the Devils didn't really get much out of Akira Schmid. So what you're dealing with right now with the Devils is you had a lot of expectations. You had a lot of, people expected you to be a Stanley Cup contender for literally a Stanley Cup contender. You come into the season and you kind of lay a dud because you finally faced some adversity. Now, there's going to be a lot of reaction to this, and it's going to be mostly negative, just to be honest. And that's even coming from me and from what I write. That's going to come from a lot of the Twitter accounts. The reporters are different because they have to deal with the players on a day-to-day basis. And if you're just constantly negative, you're going to turn into Steve Simmons, and nobody really wants that out of the reporters. But you see the situation where the Devils kind of almost the fans want them to be in desperation mode. And to be honest, Sam, we're just not there. There's a couple things that kind of show that, right? I think it was Elliot Friedman, who reported on 32 Thoughts that, the goalie market is downright insane right now. John Gibson, they're asking for everything and more to get John Gibson away from the Ducks. Even the Canadians are asking for a ton for Jake Allen, who, I feel like if he was as cheap as people said it was, the Devils would have traded for him already because he has that connection to Martin Brodeur when they were in St. Louis together. And it seems like they built like a really good relationship in that short time that Brodeur was there playing and also in the front office. I just want to warn you that desperation mode does not look good when you're a team in this position. The last time we saw a team that actually succeed in desperation mode was the Columbus Blue Jackets from, I think it was 2019. And remember, they kept Panarin, even though he was on the last year of his deal. They traded for, I believe, did they trade for Duchesne? They made a couple of trades for big names. I know they got, was it Dzingel? They got a couple players. I remember they traded the 5th round pick for Keith Kincaid, and I think that turned into Akira Schmid, which is kind of funny. Anyway, that quote unquote succeeded, right? Because they beat the Tampa Bay Lightning in the first round. It was their first playoff win ever, and it's the reason Jarmo Kekalainen still has a job to this day. That was in 2019. But even that success, you see where the Blue Jackets are now. That success probably is a reason why they're there. They gave up a lot of young assets to get these players. They also gave up young assets by not trading Panarin, who was absolutely not coming back. He was going to New York the entire time, whether it was the Islanders or the Rangers. And the fact of the matter is that desperation is never a good look. Look at San Jose. Makes the desperate move to get Erik Karlsson because they think that their window is closing, when in reality their window was closed. And San Jose is at the bottom of the standings because of that move. That Erik Karlsson move is the reason why San Jose is where they are today. San Jose would be an interesting team right now if it wasn't for that Erik Karlsson trade, because they would have had one of the top overall picks. I think the one that was used to take Jake Sanderson. He would be an interesting player on that young on a defense that's looking for youth right now. There's all these snowball effects of those big desperation trades. So, yes, the Devils have a lot of young assets. They can afford to lose one, and it really won't hurt them terribly bad, right? And as long as you're not losing maybe a Nemitz or a Hughes. But when you're looking at these pieces, you definitely don't want to give up a Mercer. A guy, that's a core piece. The guy's untouchable. He's going to probably not cost that much. He's going to get a new contract this summer. He's probably going to be one of those guys, maybe like a Jake Gensel, right, where he's making $5-6 million on 5 or 6 years, but he just wants to be a part of something. And I think that's kind of where you're going to convince him. So you don't want to move somebody like that. Holtz, I don't feel as tied to as I do Mercer, but I don't think you need to make that move. Like, you're giving up Holtz for a Gibson. Gibson probably the top name on the market because I don't think Saros is actually available. So you're giving up a Holtz and probably a first-round pick, which is the first-round pick is scary. We'll get to that in a second, but let's just get back to Holtz. You're giving up Holtz, who's finally looking like an NHL player, a very young one. I think he's 22,
he's young.
21 or 22. And you're giving him up for a guy you think is back to normal. I mean, John Gibson hasn't been good in 5 years. And you want to give up the farm for him because you're in desperation mode. And the problem with that is he's got, I think it's 3 more years on his contract. I don't know if it's 3 more years, including this one or after this one, but that's a long time to, even though it's not a terrible contract. I think it's about $6 million. That's a long time to be tied to that. We forget that we were just tied to a Corey Schneider contract that was $6 million that they had to buy out because they just couldn't take it anymore. And you don't want to be in that position again because you just got out of that buyout. And, you know, I know the cap is going up, but these contracts are expensive. You're paying Hughes, you're paying Meyer, you're paying Heischer, you're paying Bratt, you're paying Hamilton. You know, you're paying big contracts, and Luke Hughes' contract is not that far away. They could pay Luke Hughes his contract this offseason. This offseason, they could give Luke Hughes that extension. So I would you gotta make the right move. Am I saying that John Gibson is a bad move to make? No. I think that if John Gibson is the best available goaltender and you think you can get him, sure, you know, make the move if it makes sense as far as a trade. But don't make a trade just to make a trade. Don't trade, you know, Seamus Casey at the top of his value, Alexander Holtz, and a first-round pick. Now, let's talk about that first-round pick, and let's talk about why that first-round pick is so scary to give up. We talk about that first-round pick like it's basically the 2024 first-round pick, right? And sure, I mean, on the surface it is, but there are forced objections to it where if the Devils succeed to the point where they expect to succeed, which is go to the conference final, then that first-round pick is actually going to San Jose. And San Jose will end up with 2 first-round picks from the Timo Meier trade. Say what you want about that trade. That was the cost of doing business for the Devils, to not give up Holtz, to not give up Casey, to not give up Nemitz, to not give up Mercer. You had to give them the chance to get 2 first-round picks. If the Devils make the Eastern Conference Final with Gibson and they gave up a first-round pick in that trade, they've now given up another first-round pick. So that's the 2025 first-round pick. That means you've given up 3 first-round picks in a row, and I don't think this team wants to be there. I think that they want a little bit more flexibility when it comes to. I need you to remember, you know, a lot of people point to the Tampa Bay Lightning and be like, look, they gave up everything. They gave up everything to get that Stanley Cup, right? And now they're paying for it now because, you know, their stars are still there, but the depth just isn't where it needs to be. Hagel's still a good player, but anyway, the team just hasn't had first round picks, and it hasn't had prospects because they traded them all away. And yeah, I get that notion, but you also remember that they traded JT Miller to the Vancouver Canucks, who got a pretty nice first round pick that they turned into Blake Coleman. They made some savvy trades for some good players to get pieces back to build. The Devils don't have that luxury right now. They need every single piece on this team unless you get somebody to put value on Andre Palat or Marino, or, you know, you can't even afford, like, here's the thing, Siegenthaler has been bad this year, but you can't afford to give him up. There's nothing that can replace him right now unless you trade for another left-handed defenseman. So, you know, these savvy moves that the Lightning would make, the Devils don't have that luxury because that's not how they built their team. They just did it a different way. I'm not saying it's the right way, not saying it's the wrong way. They built their team from the ground up through draft and through prospect trades, bringing them in. And, you know, that's good because a lot of those, you know, you sent a lot of them in the Timo Meier trade. You sent a lot of B prospects and B players in the Timo Meier trade, and you're still surviving pretty well and got a superstar in your hands that's signed for 8 more years. But I just think that when you look at like these desperation trades, going back to those, they just don't work. And when they do work, it's minimal. Like the return is minimal. It's a series win, and the Devils just. You already won a series last year. Like there's no desperation for a series win. The desperation is to go all the way. And every team has the desperation. Edmonton has the desperation. Even Vegas has the desperation, even though they won it all last year. So I think that when it comes to the different kinds of desperation, the desperation in the trade market, which I think that's the word that Elliot Friedman used, was that, the Devils are coming off as desperate. And you don't want to do that, because that's when teams are just going to hang up the phone on you unless you give them the farm. Now, I want to talk about Seamus Casey, because everybody's talking about the World Juniors right now. And I want everybody to understand, I do understand that a game is going on, but there's no reason to talk about what's happening in the game because, we can't do play-by-play. It's against the rules. But beyond that, even talking about what's going on, it wouldn't make sense for all the people who are downloading the morning. So that's just addressing the elephant in the room, Sam, just for all of our listeners who may be asking questions in the social medias. But as far as Seamus Casey goes in the World Juniors, they're making all the headlines, right? Because Canada got knocked out. Now the team to beat is America. And in the quarterfinals, when it all matters, Seamus Casey stepped up, scored a big goal, had a beautiful assist. He's outplaying Lane Hudson, the star defenseman prospect for the Montreal Canadiens, both second-round picks, both taken around the same time. And Casey's been playing a little bit better. Now, Casey did miss a game, and Hudson hasn't been bad by any stretch. Just Casey's a little bit better. But then you look at it, and I'm going to write about this, Sam, because I think this is an interesting topic. Should the Devils take advantage of Seamus Casey's high value now? Is this the time where maybe they say, all right, you want to give us, I don't even know if you want to do Gibson for this, because I think you could do better. I think this is where you kind of target the defenseman, is where you say, hey, we got this guy Casey. I understand that we have a pretty heavy blue line, and I don't know when he's going to be able to come to the NHL, but we also know value when we see value, and we'll make it work if we have to. If he's an NHL player at 21, 22 years old, we'll make it work. You get him in the lineup. He's playing his butt off at University of Michigan, replacing. It's funny, right? Because New Jersey Devils keep replacing the star defenseman at University of Michigan. First, Luke Hughes replaced Owen Power, and then Seamus Casey comes and replaces Luke Hughes, and they're playing just as well. And now he's playing so well for Team USA. And if Team USA wins this World Junior, Sam, Seamus Casey might be the equivalent of a high first-round pick in terms of trade value, like a top 10 pick. And do you think he's going to turn into that? That's.
Ooh. I'll tell you where his value is to the New Jersey Devils. It's the fact that he is from Jersey. You got a homegrown kid, and there's nothing better, like story-wise, say if Seamus Casey comes to the New Jersey Devils, he goes through the minors, if he even spends any time there, and then becomes a top 4 defenseman, but he could be a top pairing on any other 31 NHL teams.
Yeah.
That could, but I wouldn't trade him. I know, but you talk about desperation. I don't think the Devils are desperate to do anything till 2025.
Yeah, I don't think they should be. I don't know. I can't tell you if they are or they aren't, but I don't think they should be. And then the report that we didn't talk about, friend of the podcast, James Nichols, came out and said that people are asking about McLeod. And I didn't write about it. I thought about it. I didn't write about it because, we've talked about the McLeod situation and the Hockey Canada investigation, and I don't know what to say until that comes out. So
when is it going to come out? Do you have any idea?
I thought it was supposed to come out last year. So I don't know, but it doesn't matter. I'm not going to, because I do want to give him the benefit of the doubt. So I don't want to keep talking about it when I bring up his name. But when it comes to trading him, I don't see the reason to do it unless somebody's valuing him like a legit second line NHL center. Unless somebody's putting that kind of an evaluation on him, which happens. We saw that's basically the valuation that the Lightning put on Blake Coleman, And they weren't that far off. Blake Coleman was playing in a different role here in New Jersey. And he probably, we see I think he's leading Calgary in points. That was the last time I checked.
Mm-hmm.
So, they weren't completely far off with that valuation. But when you see that another team is valuing a player way more than you value your own player, that's when you kind of have to make a deal. But again, unless that's the case, like McLeod can't be a piece in a John Gibson trade. It is either a 1-for-1 and you think Gibson is back, or, this is not the time to do it. He's a guy who you literally let – people forget this. Tom Fitzgerald put his chips on the table this offseason with McLeod and said, go sign somewhere else. He made him a free agent when he wasn't. He was a restricted free agent, and Tom Fitzgerald says, I don't feel like doing arbitration. Go be a free agent. McLeod turned around and signed a very friendly 1-year deal. And then that's when the Devils signed Bastian to a 2-year deal. They valued Bastian, despite how well McLeod played in the playoffs. The Devils valued Bastian more than they valued McLeod. That's just how it worked. And they did the same thing to Bastian, where they made Bastian a free agent and kind of put their chips on the table there. I don't know what the reasoning for that was, but McLeod signed the contract. And now he's up for another one. He's probably up for a decent raise, if everything works out and continues to play this way and all the off-the-field stuff is some other guy. And Sam, I hope to God it is, because I love the player McLeod on this team. He's so fantastic on the ice. He's everything this team needs. He brings grit while also having speed and scoring ability. So I don't think that they should trade him. I think that, and, James apparently got some flack for that report, and the Devils came back to him and said they haven't entertained any trade requests from McLeod. Here's the thing about this time of year, and this is going to happen all the way through the trade deadline. It's going to ramp up from now into the trade deadline. These teams, when they don't get what they want, they will put public pressure on the team they're negotiating with. And everybody does it. The Devils do it. The team the Devils are talking to will do it. These reports come out because the team wants McLeod. And the Devils say no. So they said, hey, we had discussions about McLeod. And kind of put the public pressure on it. Now, what that does, it happens one of two ways. Either that happens, or the Devils did have conversations with McLeod, which I don't think this is a situation. But sometimes a team does have conversations about, say, McLeod. They leak that they've had conversations about McLeod because they want to get the temperature of the fan base and how they would feel about that. It was pretty clear that most people want to keep McLeod. I do want to stray away from that untouchable word. There's not very many players that are untouchable. I would put Mercer in the untouchable part. I know a lot of people are saying he's not anymore. We got to stop forgetting how good this player was last year, and he's going to keep getting better. This year, he's even getting better now. So I'm still putting him in the untouchable bucket. But the other ones are Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, Jesper Bratt. I'd argue Timo Meier, but it's getting a little riskier with how hurt he's been, and this is the only year you can trade him without him having to sign off of it. So I get the argument there that he might not be untouchable, but I still, just for what he brings to this team when he's at his best, you got to think about this. The reason why Timo Meier makes so much more sense for this team than Johnny Gaudreau is because Gaudreau would be a great scorer on Hughes' wing, but think about how small that line would play. When you got Timo Meier in this lineup, Tyler Toffoli doesn't play huge, but he plays bigger than like a Johnny Gaudreau. And then Bratt plays good defense, really good defense sometimes. Some would argue that Bratt is the actual Selke candidate on this team this year because, Hischier has been good. Like, the Hischier is definitely not bad. Hischier is definitely great, and he scored 2 goals tonight. But Bratt has been out of this world, both offensively and defensively. So when you could put that on the line with Hughes, and then you have a Meier who can score goals with the best of them. At his peak, he plays with speed, and he could also hit and knock people down and play that type of strongman game. That is what this Devils team needed. That's what they were looking for when they traded for Timo Meier. And honestly, they really miss Timo Meier. He's the guy that has really been hurting. Obviously, they really missed Hughes and they really missed Hischier when he was out of the lineup, and the record with Hischier speaks for itself. And but I just have to say, like, Meier was the guy that really brought it all together. Meier's the reason why a full season of Meier is the reason why people had Stanley Cup aspirations for this team. And I don't understand how quickly this fan base is turning on players. If he's not untouchable, he's in that next tier down. But that's pretty much it. Outside, Luke Hughes and Simone Nemeth, I think you got to put in that. They're both going to be so good for so long. Nemeth has been great. I'm not even exaggerating. Like Luke Hughes and Simone Nemeth, I am so happy with how well they've played to start the season. They might be the team's two best defensemen on both sides of the ice. Luke Hughes has had a couple of mistakes. Nemeth has had a couple of mistakes. It is what it is. Like those things happen with rookie defensemen, but I can't say that any of the defensemen on this team have been better than him. Kevin Ball has been not bad, but definitely not great. Brendan Smith has had his issues, and John Marino has had many issues, and we already covered Jonas Siegenthaler just having a ton of issues, and Dougie Hamilton's hurt, and he's going to be out for probably the season, at least the regular season. I would imagine that he's probably going to be out for the season and then the first round series, but maybe the Devils get lucky and he comes back for that first round series. I don't think so, though. I think he's going to be out a little bit longer than the season just with the injury that he has. So you're really relying on, what is it? I think is Nemeth 19 and Luke Hughes is 21. Is that what we're looking at? Or is Luke Hughes even 21 yet? I just, you can't, when those two are playing so well at such a young age, at such premium positions, defense is so necessary, especially when you have Luke Hughes Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier and Jesper Bratt young and playing on those forward positions. You can't really touch Luke Hughes and Shimon Nemeth. You got to keep them in place. There's no real trade that's going to be a net positive for you when it comes to those two players. I don't see where that value is. Like, even if there was like another version of the Jack Eichel trade or the Erik Karlsson trade, I just don't see that working out for you when you're the Devils. So those two, put them in the untouchable bucket with Jack, Nico, Bratt, and I'm putting Mercer in that bucket. So, as far as goalies, there are no untouchables. That's pretty clear. Even Nico Dawes, who's played well. And Sam, I need you to back me up on this. Have I not been the guy since before the season? We had Chico Resch on here to talk about the top 50 Devils of all time. And he asked me, Nick, Sam, who's your goalie for the New Jersey Devils when we go into the playoffs next year? And what did I say? I said Nico Dawes.
And what did Chico say?
He said interesting. He didn't know what to say because I don't think he expected me to say that.
It's tough to evaluate a player that's coming off an injury, but I got to give you credit there because you said it first about Nico Dawes.
Nobody was saying it. I'm not trying to be that guy, but nobody was saying it. And I to be fair, I protected myself, and I did say if he comes off the injury, all right, because that is an injury that it's not easy for a defense or a goalie to just bounce back from. But when he came back and he had that really big game in the AHL, his first game back, I was like, huh. And do you know what really solidified it for me, Sam?
What's that?
He I don't remember if he said it to Ben from the Rome Sentinel. I think it was Ben. But he said he hasn't felt this good in a long time.
Interesting.
And I know they're always going to say that. But he hasn't been media trained yet. He hasn't been just drilled to say these things. leagues, right? He's just a young kid. And if he was in a lot of pain last year, he didn't play that well last year. He was kind of middling. And it's a big reason why Utica went from one of the best teams in the AHL to just kind of all right. They barely made the playoffs. They won a series, which is more than they could say about the year that they were one of the best teams in the league. But they failed to win in the playoffs. And this team last year did win in the playoffs. And it was like a qualifying round. I'm not really sure how the Calder Cup playoffs work. They're very awkward, but they won a round. They won a series. And I think it's important for players like Graham Clark, who got the call up today, and I think is going to be something. I don't know what yet. I think it's going to be something on this team. I don't know if it's this year's team. In fact, I think it's probably going to be next year's team. But I think he's going to bring something. I think he's going to bring like third line scorer, right? Probably like theoretically what you want Alexander Holtz to be on this team now. So what Graham Clark is going to be on this team next year. And he plays a smart game, right? He has some defensive lapses, as a lot of scorers do. But, man, he's got a shot on him. He can straight rip it. Got a wrist shot for days. A little injury prone. He's had shoulder issues in the past, but I'm curious to see if they give him a shot. He got a call up last year, didn't get in a game, so he's still waiting for his NHL debut. But this is the second time that he's gotten the call up to the big leagues, and I do want to see him get a shot, just with where this team is, and with Palat now. Palat is hurt, so that kind of really opens up a door. If you can get, I know Tierney is a center, and that's why Tierney's in the lineup, but I would replace Tierney with Clark just one game and kind of work out who's taking faceoffs. Because you can do it with, if you have Hughes, Holla, Heischer, and McLeod taking faceoffs, you can afford to move somebody to wing, and I think that guy is Clark. I just think that the Devils need to try stuff, and I think trying Clark, like they tried Nemitz. Think about this. Nemitz has been one of their best defensemen. He's saved multiple goals already. Made big plays on players, on breakaways or on 2-on-1s. Just looks like a veteran out there. And he wouldn't have gotten a chance if Dougie Hamilton didn't play or didn't get hurt. So I'm just here for trying certain things out without making a desperation trade. So we're going to go full circle here. And we're kind of sunset this podcast on this point. That I know everybody is fiending for a trade. I know everybody is fiending for the big move, right? They want the Devils' Twitter account to tweet it. They want Elliot Friedman and Pierre LeBrun to come out with the scoop. But, there's a reason it hasn't happened. The prices are insane, right? That's why you wait until Black Friday to buy your TV. You're waiting for the price to go down. The Devils are waiting until Black Friday, which is the trade deadline. That's Black Friday, right? Everybody's trying to get the deals. I think the Devils have enough to survive until then for a couple reasons. This Washington Capitals team, knock on wood, hasn't been playing that well. The Pittsburgh Penguins have been playing well, but they still shoot themselves in the foot enough that it's kind of even with the Devils. And the Islanders can only lose in overtime. That's how they're getting all their points. They have 10 loser points. And that, in the past, has shown to not be a sustainable way to live in the NHL. So I think that the Devils have the luxury, and then Carolina's been up and down. They played really well against New York, the Rangers, last night, but up, down, up, down, up, down. They have goaltending issues themselves. And then the Atlantic Division has been just terrible. Outside of Boston and Florida and Toronto at times, just a terrible division. Tampa looks nothing like they used to. Vasilevsky is just not the guy he was before. Still good. He's coming off a back injury, so, there's a reason why, but this just might be one of those years. It's just not their year. They're probably going to trade Stamkos, I would say. The smart move would be to trade Stamkos, and Brisebois usually makes the smart move. So you got a team there that just really isn't that good this year as compared to what they were in the past. You got a Detroit team that, after a very hot start, fell off the face of the earth and just isn't good anymore. You got an Ottawa team that's toiling in the bottom of the standings. That's the Devils are in a position where they can flounder for another month, even, and still not only just be in it, but be in a playoff spot, because that's just how this Eastern Conference has been this year. It's just been kind of middling. It's been mid, as the kids say. And I think that with the skill you have, you could win half of your games on skill alone if you're the New Jersey Devils. And you can kind of wait on getting that good goalie until you're in a position to know, basically until the position where the prices go down, right? And you know what I really want? Here's what I really want. I want, the rumors are out that the Toronto Maple Leafs are about to pay William Nylander buco bucks. I think once that wears off, and the happiness from signing Nylander wears off, I think Treliving is going to make a trade for a goalie, and he's going to set the market. Once Brad Treliving, the Toronto Maple Leafs first-year GM, sets the market, I think then you can kind of see, okay, well, this is what we can do, or this is what we have to do to get a goalie. I don't think the Maple Leafs are going after Gibson. I think that they got a couple logs on the fire, and they would like somebody a little bit younger, but I think they're going to settle for Jacob Markstrom. That was Trey Living's guy. He was, when the Flames were at their best, Markstrom was at his best. That Calgary Flames team is just in a weird spot. They've been surviving while Markstrom's hurt. I can't tell you if he's back or not yet, but it wasn't a very long-term injury, so he should be back soon if he's not back already. Dustin Wolf has been pretty terrible, but he just needs reps. He's their guy of the future. Dan Vladar, they would love to trade him, but he's not very good either. I don't think he's worth a whole heck of a lot, if anything at all. And I think they're going to trade Markstrom, and the Maple Leafs make the most sense. And I think they're not going to pay that much for him because of the contract. And I think that's going to set the market. And to be honest, I wouldn't despise Markstrom here. I hate that contract. The contract is not good. But, there's ways to work that out. But I think because of the contract, it's not going to happen. I think Gibson would be the move over Markstrom because he's a lot younger. I think he's 3 or 4 years younger, and the contract is pretty much the same. But once Toronto, I think Toronto is going to be the team that sets the market on a goalie. Because if it was going to be Edmonton's the other team, and then Carolina. Carolina never sets the market. They never set the market. They always let 3 or 4 other teams set the market and then come and pick up the scraps, put those scraps in a system. That system usually works. So I don't think Carolina is ever going to be the team that sets the market. I think it's going to be Toronto, and then 3 rungs down, Edmonton. Everybody expects the Devils to set the market because they're new at this, but they forget that Tom Fitzgerald is not new at this. Tom Fitzgerald grew up in those Penguins teams that built Stanley Cup winners, and he knows that to build a Stanley Cup winner, you can only make the right desperation move, right? Marian Hossa when it makes sense, or I'm trying to think of some of those other superstar moves that the Penguins made. Jerome McGinley. I know they made a move for him. You got to make the right moves at the right time, and I think the Devils are going to wait for that. Sam, I pretty much didn't stop talking for 40 minutes, so I'm going to take a drink of water. Can you say something?
Well, you better make that. You better drink that water before I have to go to a one shot.
Let me do some plugs since we're getting to the end of the second period. We're gonna let people get back to the game. Lots going on pucksandpitchforks.com this week. The one I want to point out, the one that we're doing, we did a special interview with Brendan Smith, defenseman for the Devils. He's doing a charity event for Jam Cancer in the Can this weekend. That's on Sunday in Newark. I don't know if there's. The last time I checked, this was a couple of days ago. There was 3 spots left for the Jam Cancer in the Can Cam Jam event. You get to play Cam Jam with the New Jersey Devils. It sounds like a lot of fun. Like, you literally have Devils on your team. And I will give you this. I asked him, who do you think is going to be the best at it? He said Dougie was really good, but the injury obviously changed. You know, he's probably not going to be able to play, I would assume. You know, with a pec injury and Cam Jam, you kind of need that to throw the frisbee. But he said Nico Hischier probably going to be the best at it because, well, Nico Hischier is just the best at everything, and I believe him. But that's going to be fun. You pay the fee, you raise the money. All the money goes to cancer, and to fighting cancer, to research, and to the right charities for cancer. And this charity, it's been around for a while. Henrik Lundqvist did something with them. Anders Lee did something with them. A couple of local players, but these are Jersey guys, born and bred. And, you know, you always want to support the Jersey charity. So I'm glad that a Devils player is jumping into this. But there's a piece on pucksandpitchforks.com about this event. All the details are in there, how to sign up, how to donate. There's also going to be an auction with really cool Devils memorabilia. They're starting to reveal that on the Jam Cancer in the Can Instagram page. So check them out. That's on pucksandpitchforks.com. Also, we had Trey Matthews. He wrote a piece on Luke Hughes today, speaking with Luke and his brother and kind of what's happening with Luke. John Bailey, he wrote a piece this week. Jersey Joe talked about 4 prospects that you need to keep your eyes on in 2024. Some really interesting ones, not the obvious ones, not like the same as Casey's and you know, the obvious guys. He talked about Jacob Malik. I don't want to give up the whole story, but Jacob Malik, a really interesting goalie, playing in overseas. So, you know, go take a look at that, Jersey Joe. And I always do an end of the month blitz. So there's a bunch of stories that I wrote, and that's all at pucksandpitchforks.com today. And yeah, join us. We've had a couple of new guys sign up, and I'm really excited to see their work. So, you know, I tell everybody, if you want a writing outlet or you want a start in this weird world that is sports writing, come join pucksandpitchforks.com.
Yeah, pucksandpitchforks.com. Also, I guess it's not new now, but for some people that haven't been to the site in a while, it's mobile friendly right now.
Yeah, we changed up the site. It's very clean looking. It looks great on mobile. So if you haven't been there in a while, go to pucksandpitchforks.com today. Also, one last plug, Sam. Well, Washington just tied it. That stinks.
Thanks for blowing it for me.
Sorry. Well, do you really want to know about the bad stuff? Go to fansided.com/NHL, and I've been writing a bunch of really cool stuff. Why did Wayne Gretzky choose number 99? I have an article on that. But Sam, they let me put it on record. I'm going to write the 5 greatest goaltenders of all time. It will live on forever, and you know who's going to be number 1. So it's going to be Chris Terreri.
There's going to be a certain Canadian in Montreal that will say something about it. If you're
sure.
Yeah.
But that's all I got.
Yep. Well, thank you all those tuning in. We'll be back shortly after the game. Dropping the podcast at midnight. Till next time, let's go Devils.